My best friend, a top-tier green tea manipulator, gets any man she sets her sights on. That included my boss and my boyfriend. On Valentine's Day, my best friend slept with my boyfriend. My boss and I stood outside the door. Imagining the look on their faces when they discovered what I'd left there, I felt an overwhelming urge to break into triumphant song. Just the other day, I ended up in bed with Elias Sterling. Serafina said this casually, looping her arm through mine while her other hand idly sifted through racks of clothes in a high-end department store. Her voice was light, almost dismissive, masking the near-cardiac arrest I felt squeezing my fragile heart. Serafina, my friend. Elias Sterling, my boss's boss, the man at the very top of my corporate ladder. I forced myself to breathe, my mind involuntarily replaying the scene from our company's celebratory banquet last weekend. Serafina, usually a formidable figure at any social gathering, had been seemingly dead drunk, draped dramatically across Elias Sterling's table. It was then in this memory that a chilling clarity struck me. How could I have been so foolish? I should have seen it that night. First, Serafina wasn't even an employee of our company. Second, she was a notorious conqueror of the social scene. A woman who could outdrink anyone under the table without batting an eye. When had she ever been the one to fall? It wasn't just the act. Even her subsequent text message, coherent and breezy, telling me not to wait for her as she had other arrangements, should have been a glaring red flag. That entire evening, while Serafina was presumably weaving her intricate web, I had mostly hidden behind colleagues, timidly toasting the senior executives, or sat in a corner diligently stuffing my face. By the end of the night, my waistband felt ready to pop. Now, in the luxury store, Serafina was showing no restraint. She was piling up clothes like they were discounted items, tossing them onto the counter for checkout. The kachuk of the PUS machine. Printing the receipt was music to her ears. She flashed a black card in my face, a wicked grin playing on her lips, and winked. Elias Sterling's card. It's a shame not to use it, wouldn't you agree? Thinking back, the signs had been there even earlier. The first time I'd shown her photos from our company's annual gala, her interest had piqued instantly when she saw Elias. For a while, she'd been unusually curious about my work, even digging up dirt on him online. Ivy League graduate, workaholic, pristine romantic record, a rare specimen of integrity among successful men. As the assistant to Elias Sterling's assistant, I ordinarily barely brushed against his shadow. Yet, after just one company banquet where guests could bring friends, he had apparently been conquered. This, I had to admit, was Serafina's terrifying genius. She was indeed a master manipulator, a supreme hunter at the very top of the romantic food chain. Just as we were leaving the mall, laden with bags, she abruptly stopped. Following her gaze, I saw the giant LED screen on the mall's exterior wall broadcasting a live stream of our company's new women's wear fashion show. The camera panned across the backstage area, and Elias Sterling's figure flashed into view. He was standing with his back to the camera, leaning slightly forward, his head bowed, pressing a soft kiss onto the exquisite, bony shoulder blades of a model. The model was Celeste, Elias Sterling's publicly acknowledged girlfriend. Her back was always remarkably straight, giving her an air of elegant nobility that had always struck me. Serafina remained frozen for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the screen. That kind of woman must be incredibly arrogant. She stared up at the display, her hand gripping my arm, trembling slightly. Her pupils constricted, excitement radiating from her. Corner of her mouth curled up with a hint of malice, her eyes glinting with the thrill of the impending hunt. They won't last. I sighed inwardly. There she was. Did she like Elias Sterling? Probably not. What she craved was the thrill of the chase, the validation of her own charm gained by bringing others low. She'd been like this since we were kids. She was the one who taught me the true meaning of a green tea. Someone who could lower herself, feign innocence, and subtly manipulate others, all with the ultimate goal of self-gratification. Frankly, my initial motive for showing her Elias's picture hadn't been entirely innocent either. If her attention was completely fixated on someone else, perhaps I would be safe. After a moment of careful consideration, I seized the opportunity. Actually, I'm in a serious relationship. We're even planning to get married this year. What? Serafina's eyes snapped back to me, wide with surprise. Who is he? Since when? Why didn't I know? Seeing my sheepish smile, her eyes narrowed knowingly. She gritted her teeth. Oh, you deliberately kept this from me, did you? Getting bold now, aren't we? She scoffed, and before I could react, her fingers were mercilessly digging into my ticklish sides. Doesn't matter. My birthday's next month. Bring him. Sister Serafina needs to approve. I shrieked, squirming uncontrollably, and nodded frantically. Only then did Sister Serafina huff dramatically and release me. As Serafina's birthday loomed closer, I found myself curled on the sofa, biting my nails as I scrolled through gift ideas. Between daily work tasks that often involved selecting corporate gifts and this personal mission, my head was starting to ache. Buzz. A message popped up on my phone. A system alert from a courier. Your package has been rejected by the recipient and is being returned. This was, I think, the 7th one in a row. Jewelry, flowers, handbags, shoes. I tried everything. Nothing seemed to stick. I screenshotted the message and sent it to Mr. Harrison, Elias Sterling's assistant. Then I glanced up at Daniel. He was seated at the dining table nearby, engrossed in work for his law firm. Daniel was a self-made man, dedicated and hard-working, forging his path in the city on his own merits. I looked at my phone, then at him. After repeating this cycle several times, he finally closed his laptop, walked over, and sat beside me on the sofa. Spit it out, he said, a smile playing on his lips. I rested my head gently on his shoulder, speaking quickly and softly. I have a really good friend. I'd like you two to meet. Daniel nodded calmly. I know. Serafina, right? He adjusted his position, resting his head on mine, his voice warm with amusement. About time we met her. You talk about her so much, you've made me curious. He wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me closer as we settled in to watch TV. I loved this position. It was our usual comfort. An entertainment news segment was playing. After a glittering awards show red carpet, a swarm of reporters surrounded Celeste, dozens of microphones thrust towards her, demanding her comments on photos circulating of her boyfriend allegedly involved in a car tryst with a non-celebrity in a parking garage. On screen, she wore a backless sheer gown, the biting outdoor wind plastering her meticulously styled bangs to her face. Surrounded by a sea of bulky down jackets, she looked small and vulnerable. The news clip cut to the paparazzi footage, a distant, shaky, blurry shot. But even through the pixelated chaos, while others might see nothing definitive, I could recognize Serafina instantly. She was a woman, with a slightly fuller figure, a beauty whose thighs, when she wore stockings, would have a slight, captivating bulge just below the band. I couldn't help but recall her words after we'd left the mall that day. Even if that man were a saint, Celeste's physique is a little too aloof for him. And her personality even more so. A knowing, subtle smile had lingered on her face. Top-quality beef is delicious, but the lowest kind of carnal desire is the most thrilling. The sheer audacity and insight of her statement had floored me. I'd always known she was a genius in relationships, effortlessly ensnaring men like Elias Sterling, who seemed like unattainable high-mountain flowers to ordinary women. The intricate, unspoken dynamics between men and women? She wielded them with ease, secrets I felt I'd never grasp. What made her truly dangerous was her ruthless ambition, clear goals, and willingness to do anything to achieve them. Buzz. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Mr. Harrison's reply. My eyes were still glued to the TV, waiting for the resolution of Celeste's public humiliation, a knot of strange tension tightening in my chest. After a tense silence, Celeste, face tight and voice cold, stated she wasn't aware of the specific situation, and that they had already broken up. With that, she turned and walked away abruptly, leaving only that proud, straight, elegant back in the camera frame, which suddenly looked fragile and lonely. It wasn't until the screen cut to another celebrity that I finally lowered my gaze to my phone. The message was short, just a single line. Confirmed with Mr. Sterling. No need to send anything further. My mouth fell open slightly in disbelief. This battle, it seemed, had ended before the war drums had even truly sounded. The victory was swift, decisive, and utterly breathtaking. Serafina. Serafina. She could so easily find and exploit that fragile, yielding part in a man's heart. Her triumphs came too easily, which was likely why, after all these years, she still delighted in casting her net wider, finding endless pleasure in the game. Daniel's steady breathing brushed against my hair. His eyes were closed and he had started to drift off. I gently shifted my weight, my gaze, tracing the contours of his face, his smooth forehead, straight nose, soft lips, finally resting on the small hollow at his collarbone. Undeniably, Daniel was successful in his career and handsome. While not Elias Sterling, he was certainly a high-quality catch. Perhaps through passive absorption of Serafina's techniques, combined with a bit of luck, I had somehow managed to acquire him. Knowing my own limitations, I understood Daniel was probably the best I could hope for, reaching only slightly on tiptoes. But was it really a good idea for them to meet? Would things truly unfold as I anticipated? Anxiety gnawed at me. There was no one to give me answers. I could only press myself closer, pushing down the apprehension, burying my face deep into Daniel's warm, comforting embrace. Serafina chose a refined Cantonese restaurant for her birthday dinner. Before that, I had subtly started replacing Daniel's usual toiletries and cologne with scents matching my own. It was a little trick Serafina had taught me years ago in college. Lying on the small bed in my dorm room, she'd painted her toenails, chatting excitedly about her latest discovery. You know that saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach? It's not complete. To make a man love you long-term, all his senses need to get used to you. Besides taste, there's sight, hearing, smell. You can cheat with all of them. Serafina truly knew her craft. So before the birthday dinner, I had repeatedly and strongly insisted she bring her boyfriend too, citing concerns about Daniel being the only man there and feeling awkward. The real reason I think we both understood was simply that I wanted an extra layer of insurance. Growing up, I'd always fallen short compared to her. Not as beautiful, certainly not as clever. I was her only female friend because I posed zero threat, always playing the role of the dependable, unassuming green leaf to her vibrant bloom. Though in truth she didn't really need female friends. The sheer thrill of conquering the male species was enough to make her tremble with excitement. She was always eager, always driven to prove her boundless charm. But this time, I intended to protect my own little corner of the garden. Still, I honestly hadn't expected Elias Sterling to actually show up for the dinner. He'd driven to pick up Serafina and arrived slightly early. He rose politely to shake both my and Daniel's hands, his grip firm and dry. Serafina merely brushed the tips of Daniel's fingers, a light touch quickly released. She greeted him with confident grace, a playful spark in her eyes. A pleasure to finally meet you. And we share the same surname, how amusing. While they exchanged pleasantries, I stole a glance at Elias Sterling. It was a strange sensation. Before this, I'd only ever seen him from afar during company-wide meetings. Today he wore a casual hooded sweatshirt paired with light blue jeans, his hair soft and falling over his forehead instead of meticulously slicked back. He looked like a normal, handsome young man. To have him this close, it was something I never could have imagined before. Being able to share a table with him, transcending the usual superior-subordinate dynamic, it was all thanks to Serafina. Elias Sterling politely filled everyone's water glasses and handed the menu to Serafina to order. I was certain Serafina had noticed the matching subtle fragrance Daniel and I wore. Taking the large menu book, she hid her face behind it, winking at me conspiratorially and mouthing, "Don't worry." She was a dangerous, yet undeniably captivating force of nature. My face flushed and I quickly lowered my head, taking a long sip of water. Daniel was a professional lawyer, and equally articulate in private conversation. Elias Sterling was no less charming. Would Serafina develop an interest in Daniel? I furtively wondered. I knew Daniel fit Serafina's physical type perfectly. The dinner lasted nearly 3 hours, effortlessly light and enjoyable, with no awkward silences. Elias Sterling paid the bill in the end. As we left, Serafina stood at the restaurant entrance, waving goodbye to Daniel and me. "Keep up the good work," she said to Daniel, smiling playfully, reaching out as if to lightly pat his shoulder. My heart gave a sudden lurch. I moved discreetly, stepping between them, intercepting Serafina's raised hand with a casual high five. She looked visibly surprised. Just then, Elias Sterling returned after paying. Serafina instantly recovered, leaning into him languidly, wrapping her arms around his waist in a soft, playful gesture of affection. All evening, she had maintained an appropriately distanced, yet engaging conversation with Daniel, perfectly balancing familiarity and reserve, making no inappropriate moves. It was a flawless performance. Yet a strong sense of unease, unbidden and potent, rose within me. Perhaps I knew her too well. Walking away a little, I pulled out my compact mirror to reapply lipstick. In the reflection, I saw they hadn't left yet, still standing by the restaurant door in a seemingly sweet embrace. But Serafina's head was resting on Elias Sterling's shoulder, and her eyes were fixed on Daniel and me, a thoughtful, calculating expression on her face. Would it work? The entire ride home I was preoccupied. Daniel clearly noticed. The moment we got home he turned, one arm wrapping around my shoulders, the other hand cupping my hip, pressing me tightly against his body. What's on your mind? His slightly damp lips and teeth traced the line of my jaw, lingering at my ear. Through the thin layers of clothing, I could feel the heat of his chest. Do you ever feel like I'm not good enough for you? You're so perfect. Daniel paused, then softly reassured me. Don't worry. That kind of woman isn't my type. My heart sank instantly. He lowered his head, kissing my neck and shoulder trailing down to my chest. I wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, lost in the moment, responding to him with fervent intensity. Both of them had told me not to worry today, but I was unarmed, certainly no match for Serafina. My heart tightened with each beat, a dark cloud settling heavier over my chest. The unease simply wouldn't dissipate. Perhaps it was just my imagination, but after that night, Daniel seemed to be working late more often. His job was always demanding and the pressure was high. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling, unsure if it was paranoia born from my own insecurities. I started compulsively checking Daniel's shirts when he took them off, searching for stray strands of long hair. I'd bury my face in the clothes waiting to be washed, sniffing deeply, trying to detect any unfamiliar perfume scents. Even worse, I began subtly questioning and investigating Daniel's whereabouts. Daniel's initial patient explanations turned into frustrated silence, a furrow deep between his brows. He might still love me, but he certainly didn't like me as much anymore. I was terrified, acutely aware that my actions were driving him away, breeding irritation. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know, had to check. Every night Daniel came home late was an agony of restlessness. I was pushing him further and further away. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I was trapped. Several times I saw his car parked downstairs from our apartment window. He would just sit there smoking, the glow of his cigarette flickering in the dark, unwilling to come inside. Serafina would still call occasionally, inviting me out for shopping or manicures, always paying with Elias Sterling's card. Elias would sometimes call her during these outings. Serafina would be in the middle of a spending spree or intently watching the manicurist apply polish, her answers often mumbled and aha, sounding distracted and not entirely engaged. Found a new target? I asked her once. Serafina was slowly selecting a nail art design from a display board. She glanced at me from the corner of her eye, a faint smile on her lips. Guess, she said softly, her tone teasing, a hint of flirtation that was both alluring and frustrating. Daniel and I were getting married this year. Surely, even she wouldn't stoop to targeting her friend's fiancé, right? I reassured myself, simultaneously feeling a pang of genuine sympathy for Elias Sterling. Serafina's interests often flared quickly and died just as fast. Any man, no matter how accomplished, who fell for a woman like Serafina was no match for her. He would be effortlessly twisted around her finger. Her heart held no affection, only the binary outcome of victory or defeat. And in the game of love, the first to fall wins. Or rather loses. The clock on the wall ticked past 1:30 a.m. A soft click from the front door. It finally opened. I shot up from the sofa, the question bursting from me before I could stop it. Where were you? Daniel stood in the doorway, his dark blue suit jacket draped over his arm, looking weary. He looked at me and his brow slowly furrowed. Had a few drinks with a client. Please, not like this. I'm under a lot of pressure. The few words of concern I had been about to offer died in my throat. I had been demanding, accusatory. I paused, regretting my outburst. I'm sorry, I mumbled softly, hurrying over to take his jacket. Daniel went straight to the bathroom to shower. He always said he was tired. It had been a long time since we'd shared any intimacy. I brushed dust off the jacket's surface, intending to steam it when my whole body froze. Carefully, I unfolded the narrow lapel and slowly pulled out a long reddish-brown curly hair from the seam. Boom! My mind exploded. A wave of icy dread washed over me. That color wasn't common. Serafina had sent me a selfie just days ago, showing off her new hair color and insisting it made her look fairer. She'd even invited me to get the same shade. The hair in my hand, its curl and length, matched the hair in that photo exactly. Why had she insisted so strongly that I get matching hair? I trembled, thinking, was it so that if she shed a hair somewhere it wouldn't be traceable? Serafina was still Serafina. She had never changed. The story was unfolding exactly as I had predicted. The thought brought a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The following days were a blur. My focus at work wavered constantly. I didn't even notice Elias Sterling standing in front of my desk until he bent down and tapped it with a curved finger. Has Serafina been to see you lately? He asked, his expression serious. Is she all right? Doesn't seem happy. I stared up at him blankly. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, a world away from the casual young man he'd been at dinner. He was, once again, my boss's boss, the unattainable figurehead. But there was a subtle shift. At least now he would approach me. Because I was Serafina's friend. We were both in a way losers in love. Battle casualties in the war she waged. I shook my head. He sighed softly, turning to leave, but I reached out and gently tugged at his jacket cuff. My voice was barely a whisper, yet it echoed like thunder in my ears. Would you want to grab a drink later? I asked. I knew I was drunk, heavily so. I couldn't stop myself from rambling, pouring out the turmoil of the past few weeks. How awful and deceitful men could be, how worthless friendship felt. I thought I understood why. Daniel was genuinely trying, working hard not just for his career but, I believed, for our future. Perhaps he truly felt I wasn't good enough for him, especially when compared to Serafina. The alcohol dulled my senses, but not enough to stop the same complaints looping endlessly in my head. Finally, Elias Sterling couldn't take it anymore. He reached out to help me up. Ugh! I turned my head and threw up onto the floor, using the last shred of my control to avoid getting any on him. Elias hesitated, then carefully helped me to my feet, practically carrying my dead weight on his shoulder. He hailed a taxi and gave the driver the address of the nearest decent hotel. He didn't know where I lived. He even asked the driver to stop for a bottle of water so I could rinse my mouth. He half carried me out of the taxi, and we stumbled towards the hotel entrance, almost collapsing in a heap. The luxury hotel's revolving door gleamed like gold, the bright, almost blinding lights piercing through my muddled senses, finally clearing my head slightly. Do you hate me? I asked him. Fate was strange. He, who had been so far out of reach, was now patiently listening to my drunken nonsense outside a hotel. I never could have achieved this on my own. Just his beautiful model girlfriend would have intimidated me into silence. Perhaps I should thank Serafina. In the cool evening breeze, I saw him gently shake his head. Tears welled uncontrollably in my eyes. I blinked them away, trying to focus on him through the haze. Daniel, I said, tilting my head up, pouting my lips slightly like a ripe cherry waiting to be picked. I used someone else's name. I was still afraid that speaking his name, Elias Sterling's name, would make everything irreversible. Another gust of wind swept by, chilling my skin. Against the deep blue of the night sky, the crescent moon hung cool and remote. I held the pose stubbornly, unmoving. I waited for a long time. Finally, a light kiss descended, a soft peck on my lips, like a dragonfly touching the water's surface. A brief touch, then gone. I realized quickly, it was the kiss of a friend, almost perfunctory. My eyelids fluttered. A tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. My sorrow was a secret known only to Elias Sterling. I didn't tell Daniel and I didn't tell Serafina. Those with the surname Shun, Serafina and Daniel shared the same Chinese character for their surname, were apparently my undoing. Sometimes Elias and I would meet for a drink or two, but it remained strictly platonic, a fragile friendship forged in shared heartbreak. He truly was a good man, both an unattainable high mountain flower and remarkably decent. As a dedicated workaholic, his romantic history was sparse. Celeste had left him feeling weary, and Serafina utterly bewildered. Yet, he had still tried to make the relationship work. These quiet moments, these confessions were our small secrets. My heart danced a quiet rhythm. He who had been a star in the sky, had descended halfway, landing in the dust. He was now within reach, if only I stretched on tiptoes and made a little effort. Still, regarding my carefully dropped hints about Serafina, he seemed unwilling to believe me. Or perhaps he was just pretending not to. I wasn't in a hurry. If he wouldn't take a stand, neither would I. As long as I knew what I was saying was true, time would eventually provide the proof. Everything felt eerily calm, as if no one had veered off course. Days blurred into weeks, spring turned to summer, and we arrived at August. Serafina called to tell me she would be spending Qixi, the Chinese Valentine's Day, with Elias Sterling. I smiled and offered my congratulations. Later that evening, I finally received a text from Daniel. He said he was working late. I let out a long sigh, unsurprised. I called him back, my voice soft and gentle as I reminded him to take care of yourself. I'll be waiting for you at home. After hanging up, I sat alone on the living room sofa, staring into the empty apartment. The only sound was the relentless tick of the second hand on the clock. This beautiful night, who would you spend it with? I wondered slowly, closing my eyes. With your star in the sky, or with the depraved worm on the ground who brings you wicked pleasure. I had done this countless times, like an insect lurking in the darkness, observing, calculating, predicting. And then a strange thought bloomed. In my mind, it grew louder and louder, until it was like a booming gong vibrating repeatedly through my chest. I felt the call of destiny. Tonight. Now. I almost burst into manic laughter. I believed I understood her perfectly. My patience, my efforts were about to yield a rich reward. I changed into my most beautiful dress, applied flawless makeup, and carefully selected an unopened bottle of fine wine from the liquor cabinet before leaving. On this beautiful night, dedicated to lovers, I sped back to the company building and knocked on my boss's office door. Elias Sterling was a workaholic. If he wasn't needed elsewhere, he would be here. Sure enough, someone opened the door. I tilted my head up, smiling at his tired face. Serafina's not with you? But it's Valentine's Day. He didn't reply, just sighed softly. Perhaps he too was waiting for a definitive answer. Finally, he capitulated, asking, "What exactly do you want?" I opened my phone. A small green icon was blinking on the map. "I think I might know where she is," I said. "I just came to ask if you wanted to go find her with me." I had prearranged to share location data from Daniel's phone. The map showed he was indeed in the office building. But I had a feeling he wasn't alone. I got a visitor's pass downstairs. The receptionist recognized me. Everything went smoothly, just as everything had gone smoothly up until this moment. Before Elias and I even stepped through the office door, I heard them. Sounds that were utterly unmistakable. Familiar male and female voices. What would it look like inside? Daniel would probably be dressed, but she would likely be naked except for her underwear, which she might have hung on her raised foot. After all, the lowest kind of carnal desire was the most thrilling. I pictured her, filled with the triumph of the moment. "Still want to go in?" I asked Elias, holding up the bottle of wine. Serafina was beautiful, 1,000 times more so than me. She had the power to bring down men who were unattainable to me. But in a place she didn't know existed, I had just delivered the final blow of judgment, crushing Elias Sterling's last lingering attachment and reluctance towards her in this secret tribunal. He would no longer be bewildered. "No," Elias Sterling said, his face dark. He turned and walked away. So that they could share a celebratory drink the moment they emerged, I placed the bottle of fine wine squarely on the table nearest to the office door, just outside. Imagining the scene they would discover, I truly wanted to sing out loud. I had waited so long for this day. I had circled around, planned this elaborate path, all for Elias Sterling. I took one last look, then turned and followed Elias Sterling without hesitation. We descended to the underground parking garage. I got into the passenger seat of his car, closed the door, and pressed the privacy glass button. I had no desire to be photographed by prying eyes. Elias Sterling was crying. My star. My heart ached. I leaned over and gently kissed away the tears on his face. His beautiful eyes looked at me. Only at me. "I will never betray you," I said. He was so close now, his broken heart within reach. Who was it that said the lowest kind of desire is the most thrilling? I leaned down and unzipped Elias Sterling's trousers. This time he didn't refuse. The student surpasses the master. I was a very good student indeed. A beautiful, gentle Valentine's night, reserved only for those who were prepared. Afterward, things became simple, falling naturally into place. I wouldn't waste the opportunity. Striking while the iron was hot, I quickly pulled Elias Sterling towards getting married. We signed a prenuptial agreement. The party who committed adultery would leave with nothing. Elias Sterling and I both needed that kind of security. This relationship had cost me too much effort. It needed to be sealed with a definitive hammer blow. Serafina never married. She still moved from man to man, experiencing her moments of the hunt. Was she still pursuing victory? I didn't know. And frankly, I had absolutely no interest in finding out anymore. After scrolling through her social media updates with detached amusement for a while, I put my phone down. After that night, Daniel seemed to understand implicitly. He deleted all my contact information. I knew it wasn't guilt, he was just embarrassed. As for Serafina, I assumed Elias Sterling had confronted her privately. Neither of them contacted me again. I didn't block Serafina. I still found occasional amusement in her social media posts. After all, she had taught me so much. I was genuinely grateful to her. The room was comfortably warm from the heater. The cold wind outside reaching this point became gentle. The lingering afterglow of physical intimacy hadn't faded. I turned on my side, slowly studying Elias Sterling's face in sleep. He breathed evenly, his expression peaceful and content. My gaze was almost greedy, tracing his smooth forehead, straight nose, soft lips, finally settling on the small hollow at his collarbone. He was no longer my boss's boss. He was no longer unattainable. The moment I first saw this man, I knew I shouldn't have him, but I craved him desperately. I cautiously stroked his brow bone, then slid my hand back to the nape of his neck. His hair was soft and slightly damp in my palm. My heart swelled, the sense of satisfaction overflowing. Did I love Daniel? Perhaps a little. But he was too low. So low that I could reach him just by standing on tiptoes. I had always wanted the star in the sky. But back then, Elias Sterling was successful with a beautiful girlfriend, and I was merely the assistant, unable to even touch the hem of his coat. I couldn't win. There was an invisible but tangible wall between us. My life was meant to be lived forever off stage. A tiny speck of dust gazing up at that distant star. In the game of love, the first to fall loses. Thankfully, I had an excellent hunter as a friend. Since childhood, I'd always been inferior to her. Neither as beautiful nor as clever. But she was fierce, competitive, and endlessly curious about anything she couldn't immediately have. Someone like Daniel? Absolutely her type. But I had to hide. Daniel, make him seem incredibly important, then pretend to accidentally let her discover him. Let her see him, but not quite touch him. Make her itch. Make her crave. Serafina couldn't bear it. How could a weak, clumsy green leaf possess something interesting? Something she hadn't seen before. Thankfully, I knew my hunter well enough. While I couldn't be the hunter, I could be the fisherman. All I had to do was cast my net and reel in the injured prey that had been shot down, bringing him ashore and caring for him well. This was my star fallen to earth. As if sensing my prolonged gaze even in his sleep, Elias Sterling's eyes fluttered open slightly, then closed again sleepily. Not sleeping, he murmured, a hint of confusion in his voice. Sleeping, I replied, burying myself deeper under the blankets, gently pulling his head into my embrace. Sleep now. Sleep. Star in the sky shining bright. In the deep night sky, stars shimmered, and the soft moonlight streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow on the pale duvet. I closed my eyes, a smile playing on my lips. Tonight I would sleep well.